Hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Enjoy the fanfic, and let's begin part 3. 15 root agents laid in front of Naruto. The blonde shook his head while the others were going through a series of exercises prescribed by him. As soon as he said they were allowed to challenge him, those 15 spent no time getting to it. Clearly, they didn't learn from the other two that he incapacitated. Number 30. You've risen from the posture. Drop down or that's 100 push-ups for everyone, he said as he walked through the rows of masked students. Number 30 quickly corrected themselves. As expected of root agents, despite the obvious pain they were in, they didn't complain. In fact, he wondered if all he'd see were blank stares from them if he removed their masks. Well, he'd work that out of them eventually. This is all you'll be doing for the next week or two. Don't even think about fighting or casting jutsu. You aren't that good yet. For now, get rid of everything you think you know about chakra, ninjutsu, genjutsu, and taijutsu. As it stands, the only thing you're good for is standing there silently, he instructed. He heard no reply. Am I talking to nothing? He asked. No, Naruto-sama, they all instructed with absolutely no fire in their voices. The blonde sighed and he shook his head. Oh, I guess I'm boring you all then. Alright then. Push-ups for all of you until I say you can stop. Next time I talk, I better not just hear some drones. You're living, breathing people. Act like it, he said as he pinched the bridge of his nose. Honestly, Danzo-kun, why would you turn humans into emotionless machines? Sigh, the blonde wondered what his Danzo would think of this one. So much potential nearly being wasted because they couldn't even feel it within themselves. Oh well. I didn't expect this to be something easy anyway. I'll just have to continue to monitor them, he said before he turned to the 15 who were still down. And so long as those 15 keep laying there, that's another set for all of you. He exclaimed. Oh, what was that? Did his ears deceive him? Uzumaki Naruto was sure he heard a groan. It was an almost inaudible huff, but he definitely heard it. Unfortunately, he couldn't tell who did it, but that already proved to be a success for him. For these emotionless grunts to actually give off a groan proved worthwhile. That's right. Groan all you want. You're all brothers and sisters in arms. United you stand, divided you fall. If you want to blame anyone, then blame your brothers over there still resting, Naruto said as he thumbed over the other members still groaning from having been defeated by him. He didn't see it, but behind their masks, those doing push-ups glared at their brothers, but continued to perform. A total of 2 hours passed before the root members were finally finished with their push-ups. Each of them sweated profusely. Small Blade's hair was easily messed up from the practice and her chest huffed painfully. Very good. We'll stop with that tonight. Tomorrow, Small Blade will run you through your exercises. You will listen to her and follow her every order when I'm not here. I expect good things when I return. For now, you're dismissed. Take a bath and get some rest, he said while he patted the masked Hyuga's shoulder. I'm counting on you, he said. Though she only bowed, Small Blade felt something strange within her chest. She'd never heard those words before from Danzo on any assignment that he'd given her. Why did it even matter? This feeling felt very foreign. However, it wasn't a bad feeling. It was pleasant. Yes, Naruto-sama, she finally replied. He smiled and left the root headquarters. When he returned home, he shook his head and rolled his eyes when he saw the goddess of the moon sleeping in his bed. He pulled the covers over her body. He then grabbed a spare pillow and some blankets. He left his bedroom and walked into his living room. He then sat on the couch and took himself into a deep sleep, tired of the day. Next morning came and he woke up from a crash in his bedroom. I wonder if I can refund a wife, he thought before he got up and walked into the room. He noticed his wife on the floor groaning in pain. Need some help? He asked, a smile on his face. Tsukuyomi glared at her young husband. Just help me up, she said as she held her hand out. The blonde decided to do so. He grabbed her and pulled her up. The goddess of the moon felt her legs stumble and she leaned against her new husband. Dear wife, I'm glad you're excited to get to know me, but my body is childlike right now. I'm sorry that I can't satisfy you just yet, Naruto said while the moon goddess gawked. SSS satisfy. D don't be ridiculous. I wouldn't expect a mortal to be able to please me. Also, where have you been? I'd like to not starve since I'm incapable of working your human appliances, she said. As if to prove her point, her stomach decided to alert them both to its plight. The black-haired woman placed her head down in shame while the blonde laughed. Right. I guess I wouldn't be a good provider if I didn't provide for my wife. All right, I'll make you something, he said. With Tsukuyomi grabbing his shoulders for support, they walked out of his room. Also, please tell me how I shall have my body cleansed. I have not yet figured out these knobs as you call them, she said. They don't have doors in heaven, or wherever you're from. He returned to her. He then grimaced when she tightened her grip on his shoulders. If she was a goddess then, despite being clumsy, she was pretty strong. Of course we have doors. They open when we come near. She answered. Wisely, Naruto decided not to question it. What could he say anyway? How could a mortal comprehend the environment of a self-proclaimed goddess? Anyway, they entered the kitchen. Thankfully, the clones had repaired the table and bought new chairs. When Tsukuyomi took a seat, she watched her husband open the refrigerator and cook the food inside. Wow, it seems good. I don't think I've ever seen my meals prepared before, the goddess said before she was presented with a bowl of rice, 2 fish, soup, and some type of egg dumplings. She noticed the fork for her. She quickly tried to pick it up. It flipped through her fingers and clacked on the table. Tsukuyomi's face became red with embarrassment. If her pride as a goddess could go down any lower, then this was it. She couldn't even pick up a damn fork. The goddess of the moon looked up and she saw her husband looking at her with the damnable smirk on his face. Need some help, dear wife? He asked. She smiled, trying to keep the snarl from her lips. No, thank you, dear husband. I can handle the difficulties of a fork just fine, she replied. Naruto shrugged his shoulders and stood up. All right then. Enjoy your breakfast. I've got stuff to do today. I'll be back later. Try not to break anything, he said as he walked down the hall and into the bathroom. Actually, Tsukuyomi didn't get to finish her statement when she saw her spouse leave. She looked back at the fork. She tried to pick it up and she watched it fall on her lap. She placed her head in her hands. If this was what marriage was, then she'd just stay a virgin goddess forever. With some time and some adjustments, Tsukuyomi finally picked up the fork and stabbed it into her food. When she placed it in her mouth, she sighed. Indeed, it was so tasty. Was this what humans ate every single day? Everything tasted wonderful. When Naruto returned, he was in different clothes. He created a clone to go back to its job and offered Tsukuyomi a farewell. She didn't even have time to respond before he left her alone. Though she didn't like this situation, she desired to thank him for the breakfast he made. Wait, why should I thank him? He should be honored to serve me like this. The beautiful woman thought to herself. Now then, time for her to conquer the challenge of shower knobs. Terrible handles, you shall kneel before the goddess of the moon and cleanse her body of the night's filth. Meanwhile, Naruto paid for an onigiri and some pickled rice. Not the most satisfying breakfast, but he doubted Tsukuyomi would want to be around him more than needed. He was already aware of just how non-traditional of a marriage this was. However, he couldn't let her go without confirming this threat. If it was real, then he needed as many cards as he needed. Maybe once the threat was over or verified, he'd spend the rest of his life apologizing to her for treating her like a pawn. Come to think of it, I hope she doesn't torture my soul for all eternity. Maybe I didn't think this through, he thought to himself with a grimace. Still, if having his soul damned to an eternity of pain was the price for saving not only this world, but his own world, then he'd take it. He took out the report from Tsukuyomi and looked it over. He'd have to take the forces of route to the location of those chakra veins. He wanted to get them started in that training as quickly as possible. The only problem was that this report was very far out. Sea country, is it? That was one of the countries annexed by Kurigakure when its daimyo proved to be a member of a cabal for nobles. Its political infrastructure collapsed when it was discovered. However, it was because of its merging into Kiri that it became the basis for superb naval combat. Kiri built a lot of their ships there. Actually, based on Danzo-kun's memories, Orochimaru had a base there that they were operating on. This might be worth investigating. I could also take this time to bring this world's Orochimaru out of his hole, Naruto thought as he ate his food with a sudden smile on his face. Yeah, that sounded like a plausible plan. Anything involving Orochimaru would always be investigated by Konoha, especially since the Sandaime had a bit of a soft spot for his former student. Well, at least he did in the past. Only that would explain why he allowed such a man to escape. His thoughts planned, Naruto entered training ground 3. He spotted Sasuke and Sakura. When both noticed him, only Sakura offered to try any sort of greeting. He opted for a pleasant greeting instead of one he was sure would annoy them both. It was clear to him that both were still trying to wrap their minds around what they learned yesterday. I still can't believe Naruto's from not just one famous clan, but two. Well, it doesn't matter. He's still Naruto after all. No way is he gonna seduce me from Sasuke-kun. If he dares ask me out, I'll knock him sideways. Senju, Uzumaki or whatever. Sakura thought to herself. However, Sasuke just continued to stare at the blonde with a bit of silent anger and curiosity. His mind kept replaying that training scene over and over. He lost to Naruto. He, Sakura, and Kakashi couldn't even touch two bells from the genin. What had he been dedicating his whole life to if he couldn't even compete with Naruto of all people? Aware, but unconcerned of their thoughts, Naruto kept to his own thoughts until they all saw Kakashi come forward. Good morning. See, I can be on time when it suits us. Now that we're all gathered, I think it's good for us to start some training. Then I think some D-rank missions to help us round out the day. You guys think that's a good plan? Kakashi asked. What about? Great. Glad we're all in agreement. Let's start with a couple of laps around the lake. Last person to finish pays for everyone's lunch. Kakashi said, interrupting the statement Sakura was about to make. Naruto and Sasuke quickly started running. Sakura gawked before she started as well. Kakashi watched them all and smiled, but his eyes continued to hone in on his blonde student. So many questions and so many mysteries. Never in his life had he expected Minato's son to be a part of the Senju clan, let alone from the future. For now, he'd just trained Naruto the same as everyone else, but what could he really teach him? I wanted to take it easy, but his descriptions of the future could scare anyone. I'll have to make sure Sasuke and Sakura are properly trained. Who knows what will happen now, the Jonin thought as he watched his students run around the area. Welcome, Raijin-sama. Yami-sama has been expecting you, a dark-haired woman, dressed in warrior armor, said with a bowed head to the buff man. He hardly gave her a glance and passed her by. Of course she's expecting me, I sent one of my messengers to contact her. You can go back to your station. Better yet, if you want to please me, take the armor off. People like you have your roles, a warrior isn't one of them, he said with a sharp growl while the woman simply bowed one more, not perturbed by his comments. It was widely known through all the realms of Raijin's temperament. He was a thunder god, turbulent and unruly. Meanwhile, Raijin continued to walk through the massive darkened corridors of the underworld palace. Male and female servants and warriors bowed to him while guards clad in blackened armor pushed open the doors to allow him entrance. When Raijin stepped inside, he was greeted by a beautiful throne room lined with black drapes and beautiful ceiling candles. His shoes felt the soft embrace of a wonderful carpet. One couldn't even really call this a throne room, it seemed more like a throne hall lined with wonderful upholstery. Then his dark, yellow eyes spotted the dark throne and the woman sitting upon it. Well, you couldn't even call it sitting. Her wonderfully thin legs leaned off one of the armrests while her back laid against the other. One of her legs brushed up against the other, causing her black dress to rise up over her thigh. He then turned his head and looked upon the beautiful face of Yami, his aunt. Her sleeveless dress strap slipped off her shoulder as she smiled. Welcome, my beloved nephew, to my abode. You should visit your dear aunt some more. I believe the last time you've come to me was about a few 100,000 years ago. You've certainly filled out. However, can I ask that you not be so rude to my subjects? They are all quite capable, Yami said, her voice oddly stimulating to Raijin's ears, but he snarled. Warriorship isn't one of them, my esteemed aunt. Anyway, I'm not here to discuss our opposed views. I'm sure you've heard about the circumstances surrounding Tsukuyomi, he said. Yami smiled as she swirled a piece of her beautiful hair. Indeed I have. I must say I'm quite jealous. I'm so jealous I'm tempted to smite her down. To enjoy the presence of our most beloved existence, Uzumaki Naruto, is a reward I never thought any female god would have. Word of her mishap has indeed reached my ears as well. However, I don't know what you think you shall accomplish in coming to me. I'm in agreement with my sister. Perhaps this is something we've needed for a long time, the beautiful ruler of the yin half of the universe said while Raiga scowled. A strike of thunder and lightning rolled through the skies. Regardless of how much you and mother like that man, it doesn't change the fact that Uzumaki Naruto's immortal. It is an insult to our godhood that my sister would find her hand tied to a mortal man. You and mother made that law to forbid us from directly interacting with them. Give her to me and let me deal out her punishment. You two aren't even keeping with your laws if you allow this farce to continue. He returned, a deep seed of anger in his voice. Despite the rudeness, Yami just chuckled and turned her body over, letting it seem to flow seamlessly over her chair. My, you seem quite concerned for your older sister. I suggest you rein in your tumultuous temper, my little nephew. Besides, your mother is correct. I too have sensed a growing unease that affects us all. Perhaps there is indeed a reason for why Tsukuyomi has done what she did. Perhaps there's a reason the universe needs an Uzumaki Naruto that we've never encountered before, one not tied to my blessings nor my sister's. I for one am absolutely thrilled by it, Yami said while Raijin clenched his massive fists. Lightning sparked around his body. He is one damn mortal. Why would the two of you care so much about him? What threat can this be that even we can't take care of? If you like the brat so much, why don't you both just split his soul in half and him until the end of time for all I care? Leave Tsukuyomi out of it. Raijin exclaimed, his anger quickly rising. Yami smiled. Oh, trust me, I'd like nothing more, but I believe you understand what that would mean if either your sister or I attempted to pledge ourselves to a mortal. This wouldn't be like Tsukuyomi's situation. This is what's been decided, my nephew. Listen, as sad as it is, Naruto-kun's still immortal. Tsukuyomi will be free of him while Kami and I will decide what to do with this anomaly. Put up with it for now. Besides, Tsukuyomi's not the most mindful woman. There's a reason she's been a virgin goddess for so many years. I don't think you have to worry about her performing any wifely duties, Yami replied before she waved her arm. The door to her throne room opened. Now, if we're done, I think it's time you left. I grow bored of this conversation. Lax though I am, I do still have my own duties to attend to. You're dismissed, Yami said. Raijin looked back at the door and snarled. Just like you grew bored of Susanoo. The man asked. Instantly, Raijin gasped as he dropped to his knees. A surge of dark energy swirled around Yami in such violent bursts that the thunder god felt the life in 5 worlds vanish almost instantly. The walls of Yami's mansion started to crumble and shake in ruthless spurts. Out the window, Raijin saw thousands of black flames explode from the ground beneath Yami's domain. Demons and unholy creatures screeched into the air as the dark clouds parted in the air. Powerful, blue pillars of dark light struck the ground, breaking it into pieces of smoldering rock. Souls of the damned screamed in pain below, all of those who'd led horrible, evil, decrepit lives hollered in the thousands. Raijin tried to lift his head, but he growled as he was kept pinned down. He could just barely move his eyes up to see the utter fury on Yami's face. Her godhood flourished angrily. As expected of the woman who controlled the evil in the universe, Raijin could feel his body becoming corrupted just by being in her presence. Yami stood up. Her heels clacked on her steps before she stood in front of her nephew. I suggest you watch your mouth, Raijin. I said you're dismissed. Now, get the hell out before I find a better use for you than what your realm dictates. I gave you my judgment on this matter. I warn you this one, do not delve into things beyond your control, she said. Yes. Please forgive my impudence, Raijin said before Yami turned around and walked back to her throne. She then waved him out and he left without another word. As Raijin left, he slammed his fist against the wall once the door was closed. Fine, mother, aunt. You both want unease. I will give you more unease than you will ever have known. You've been too complacent anyway. I will not allow that mortal to have my sister under any circumstances. Raijin thought to himself. Perhaps it was time for someone new to take the reins in how the universes kept their balance. Perhaps his mother and aunt got too old for their jobs. Perhaps it was time for a replacement. Team 7 ate their lunch while Sakura wept quietly at her allowance for the month being wasted. Since when did Naruto get so fast? Sakura couldn't understand it. To be honest, it was probably good that he didn't win. He probably would have gotten them ramen. She really didn't feel like eating that fattening stuff right now. Alright, once we finish our lunch, we'll head to the Hokage mansion for a couple of D-rank missions to end out the day. I must say, I'm actually starting to like you guys, Kakashi said while Sasuke and Sakura grumbled. Naruto, on the other hand, didn't really hear him. He was already making plans in his head for what to do when he got to the land of sea. In the time he did the training and ate, he'd actually come up with a plan that he thought would yield some good results. Thankfully, he didn't have to wait too long. Once Team 7 was finished with their lunch, they appeared in the mission room, right in front of the Hokage. Naruto greeted the Sandaime and the man greeted him back. As usual, the entire place smelled of tobacco. How's shinobi life been treating you, Team 7? Hiruzen asked. Well, it's our second day on the job. I think we're just one big, happy family, Kakashi replied with a bright smile on his face. Unfortunately, neither Sasuke nor Sakura could say the same. As for Naruto, he just laughed it off. It was much too early to be calling them that of all things. Hiruzen laughed and nodded his head. Good, good. This is how new genin cells should be. Anyway, we do have a couple of missions for you. You can give a tour of the village to some tourists that have just come in, you can clean the hotel toilets, you can run errands for the teachers at the academy, or you can. Hiruzen listed off the missions one after the other. Why do I feel like all we've been doing is chores? I thought this shinobi life would be more than this. Sasuke-kun and I on dangerous missions. He protects me and picks me up in his arms. He then kisses me in the moonlight. Cha, that'd be perfect. Sakura thought to herself while Sasuke got angrier and angrier, but he wisely kept his mouth shut. Meanwhile, Naruto rolled his eyes. No, he was not going to have a repeat of last night. Actually, Gigi, I have something I want to talk with you about. Preferably with Kakashi-sensei as well. I promise it's important, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki said. Sarutobi stiffened and so did Kakashi. The aged Hokage frowned, but quickly nodded. I see. Very well. Come to my office, he said as he stood up from behind the desk. Huh, what do you guys have to talk about? Sakura asked. It concerns Naruto-kun's monthly stimulus. We'll also be discussing some matters concerning what I spoke with you about yesterday, Hiruzen answered. The pink-haired girl slowly nodded. Alright, not many people knew Naruto was a member of the Senju clan. Perhaps it wouldn't be good for too many people to know that. Kakashi smiled. Don't worry, Sakura. We shouldn't be too long. Once it's been announced that Naruto's a Senju, the entire village will be in an uproar, for better or worse. We're going to prepare for that. You two take a mission and we'll do it. We'll be back in a moment, Kakashi said. Sakura and Sasuke glanced at each other, but they agreed. Well, the former wouldn't complain. She got to spend more time with her was never a bad thing. With that said, Naruto, Kakashi, and Sarutobi entered the Hokage's office. Once the door was closed, the Sandaime's face turned very serious. Is there a problem, Naruto-kun? He asked. The blonde nodded. Within your jurisdiction, I've been busy looking into events that might lead up to the point that our future happens. While I can't pinpoint the exact moment all of this happens, I do know Orochimaru was a central figure to this problem, Naruto said, which got both Hiruzen and Kakashi to frown. How so? Sarutobi asked. He attacks Konoha during the Chunin exams with the combined efforts of Tsunagaker and Iwagakure. The attack doesn't succeed, but that's the first major event that I can recall that might have led up to that point, he lied. Truth be told, this was an estimated guess. Orochimaru had spoken about invading Konoha with Danzo. This was done in a way that if Orochimaru succeeded, then he would appoint Danzo as the Hokage, with the Sannin becoming a sort of hidden advisor. The snake summoner would then be allowed to conduct whatever experiments he desired in the name of Konoha. Naturally, Danzo agreed under the pretense of killing Orochimaru for later. The former emperor also surmised that Iwa and Suna would join in from past grievances. The current political situation with Suna that he learned from Danzo's memories showed that their daimyo came to Konoha for its superior mission record. That led to not many missions being given to Sunagaku. If Naruto predicted right, then that would lead to some animosity. On the off chance that Iwa and Suna didn't join, then Naruto could just blame that on the timeline changing. It was certainly plausible. As for Hiruzen, he placed a finger to his chin. This was concerning. Even now, he had trouble dealing with the idea that Naruto was from the future, but his story continued to make sense. There had been unrest between Konoha and Suna for a few years. The daimyo of Wind had been coming to the village hidden in the leaves with assignments. Sarutobi tried what he could to be considerate of Suna, but it seemed that it wasn't enough. As for Iwa, well, that didn't need much explaining. So Iwa hasn't forgotten what Minato-sensei did to them in the Third Great Shinobi War. Naruto, how did we win? Kakashi asked. It wasn't easy. About half the village was destroyed, but I handled Suna's Jinchuriki. Jiraiya took care of Iwa's two Jinchuriki. It took the combined efforts of Tsunade, Kakashi, you, and others to handle Orochimaru, Iwa, Suna, and their neighboring forces. I think the battle went on for nearly a week, he said. Despite this news, Kakashi and Sarutobi found themselves impressed. It seemed Naruto would grow into an outstanding shinobi in the future. And the casualties? Kakashi asked. That I can't tell you. Just know that they were heavy, the blonde answered. An odd silence fell over the room, but Sarutobi quickly cleared his throat. Then we will have to make preparations immediately. Naruto, you mentioned the land of the sea, why is that? Hiruzen asked. Naruto stared out the window. Back in my time, there was a period where Orochimaru set up a hidden base in the land of the sea. Unfortunately, I don't know when he started making it. Even if he isn't in the land of seas yet, he could be there later. I hope you can send Team 7 under the guise of a C rank mission. If I recall, the land of sea is familiar with Konoha shinobi. If Orochimaru is there, then I hope he has nothing to do with the Otsutsuki clan. I think he does, because the Otsutsuki were also able to breathe underwater, which Orochimaru researched, or is about to research, the blonde replied. Kakashi frowned. You mean, you should go, since Orochimaru might be an agent for these Otsutsuki members, then at least you'd be able to figure it out? He asked. Naruto nodded. Yeah, even in my time, I found it rather strange that Orochimaru would undertake this goal of trying to rule Konoha. Now I wonder if it was simply to throw the world into turmoil. With Iwa and Suna having waged war on Konoha, that led to Kumo and Kiri making moves against them as well. We were all too busy fighting each other to be ready for the enemy. By the time we got our heads out of our asses, it was too late, he answered. Hiruzen leaned forward. Could you combat Orochimaru if you found him? Naruto sighed and scratched the back of his head. Well, this body is hardly what it was when I was an adult. At best, I could probably delay him. Now, if I had Kakashi with me, then that's a whole different matter. At the very least, we're not gonna die, he replied. Truth be told, that was also a lie. Given how weak this world was, the former emperor was pretty sure he could deal with Orochimaru as easily as anyone else. However, he didn't need to go around telling Hiruzen that he had that kind of power. The Sandaime was still suspicious of him, and in case Konoha turned into an enemy, he didn't need to show his hand. That said, even if they were an enemy, they wouldn't be that much of a threat. However, he'd rather not destroy Konoha if he could help it. He was born in one after all. Hiruzen thought on this. Of course, all of this made a lot of sense. Anything involving Orochimaru had to be investigated. However, he also knew of his old student's obsession with the Sharingan. To just deliver Uchiha Sasuke to him was unsettling. Plus, if he learned of Naruto's Senju roots, then who knew what he'd try to do? Hell, he'd tried once already. Tenzo was a prime example of that. If you're worried about Team 7, Gigi, then I believe there's another reason we should go into the land of sea. I have reason to believe that therein lies the key to giving the elemental nations pure chakra as well. I know what you're thinking, why would we give it to our enemies? However, you have to know that once it becomes known, no matter how hard you try to hide it, it will be discovered. All I can do is make sure Konoha's the first to know about it, Naruto replied. Hiruzen frowned. How did you figure this out? He asked. Naruto laughed. Don't be so suspicious. Pure chakra makes you naturally sensitive to the earth. I guess it took mine a bit of time to get used to the earth, but I can at least sense one of the chakra veins. Once it's seeped into your body, you'll have it for the rest of your life. I actually spent some time compiling a list of chakra exercises for everyone genin and above to learn. Even you'll benefit from them, Gigi. I recommend you research it as soon as possible. Trust me, the benefits are immense. Even the civilians could see an increase in life of about 20%. He exclaimed excitedly. I see, the Hokage replied. He and Kakashi then watched Naruto take out a scroll. All jokes aside, Gigi, you're going to want to read this carefully, preferably with Shikaku-san and the council. I don't expect changes quickly, but you'd better start as soon as possible, the blonde said. Hiruzen took the scroll and frowned. Based on the seriousness in Naruto's eyes, it seemed that this would need to be treated seriously. If that's the case, then I can pull up a team for it. It's a little unorthodox, but if there is minimal chance of shinobi encounters, then I don't see why not. If this is indeed the case, then I'd like for Kakashi to be one of the first ones to undergo this process. However, I want this researched extensively. We might have to strike a deal with the Land of Sea's daimyo to allow our shinobi to reside there. Sea country isn't the most prosperous nation, thus they rely on shinobi from Kurigakure for protection. However, Konoha has never been on their bad side. It should be possible, Sarutobi said. Kakashi chose this moment to interject. Hokage-sama, do you think we should bring Jiraiya-sama with us as well? If it's something that will increase Konoha's strength, then I believe we should consider the possibility of him coming back, the Jonin said. Hiruzen leaned forward. While I do agree with you, Jiraiya is currently working on the information Naruto's presented us with already. Have no worries, once this has been properly researched, he'll be one of the first ones to have this incorporated. Anything else, Naruto-kun? The Hokage asked. The blonde then slumped his shoulders. Yeah, but I don't think you'll like it, Gigi. I know you might hate it, and I don't like it any more than you do, but we might need Danzo's forces, the former emperor said. As expected, Hiruzen Sarutobi was not happy. They sure are taking a long time. Who knows where the fire daimyo's wife's cat is, Sakura said nervously as she stood next to Sasuke. So far, Operation Ask Sasuke Out on a Date wasn't going very well. Her crush had only offered grunts or non-committed answers to any question or statement she had. This was definitely not like how she dreamed when she slept. Then again, there was no love whose future wasn't worth fighting for. Meanwhile, Sasuke tried to hide his irritation of Sakura hounding him all the time. He thought that she'd learn he wanted to be left alone when he stopped caring to answer her questions. Clearly, that wasn't the case. Of all people, why did he have to be paired up with her? Truth be told, he wondered if being dropped from the Konoha program was worth not being around her. Thankfully, he could be preoccupied with his own thoughts. However, those didn't do much to ease his mood. The Uchiha felt like he was living in some kind of nightmare. Sasuke was also a part of the clan that helped create Konoha. It was because of both the Uchiha and the Senju that Konoha became what it was now. Why wasn't he given this supposed training that Naruto was? Did he have to request it? Was that how Naruto did it? The more Sasuke thought about it, the angrier he got. Of course, once the loser learned of his Mokuden, he would go to the Hokage on how to control it. Why hadn't Sasuke thought of that? Could he even sign up for such a program? Was he the only clan heir not aware of it? Why hadn't anyone told him? The Uchiha's thoughts were interrupted when the Hokage, Naruto, and Kakashi returned to the meeting room. The two noticed the Hokage looked notably less pleased than when he left before. He returned to his desk and sighed. Have you selected a mission? He asked. Sakura held up a scroll and nodded. When Hiruzen saw what it was, he grinned like a madman. Good, clearly there was still justice in the world. I see. You've chosen to catch Tora. I wish you the best of luck, Team 7, he said, a smile on his face. Somehow, Naruto could tell that smile wasn't very sincere. As he and the rest of his team left, he was quickly going to understand the worst day of his life. He was also going to make sure that Sarutobi Hiruzen was going to pay for it. Dearly. Small Blade looked down from where she was standing. To be honest, She didn't remember when she joined the Root organization. She didn't remember her former life, former friends, or former anything. All she remembered was to listen to whatever Shimura Danzo said. The word of Danzo was law. Loyalty was to him first and the Hokage second. Whatever he said went. As such, in front of her, she heard him hand over control of Root to Uzumaki Naruto. She didn't question it, she didn't oppose it, she just accepted it. Danzo had transferred ownership and loyalty of all Root agents from himself to Naruto. Before that time, she'd been a part of the reserves, being constantly tested and molded into what Danzo thought a proper shinobi was. She'd gone through hellish training, worked her body under unorthodox methods, and read so many books that her mind gave her a headache for days. Everything was a day of repetition. Wake up, eat, train with others, study, train, sleep, and do it all over again. Hell, some days sleep was never to be had. Some days it was considered a luxury. What Small Blade was getting at was that Danzo worked the Root agents. He worked them hard. One might consider him a slave driver if they tried to label him. No one complained. The punishment was worse if they had the gall to try. Now, this was what seemed strange to Small Blade. This training that Naruto assigned to all of these warriors and to her, it was the first time she saw her fellow agents on the floor, all of them gasping for breath. Some of them actually collapsed from exhaustion. It was only when Small Blade did her own exercises that she felt the pain. It wasn't just her body. It was also her chakra coils. She almost thought they were going to rupture. Of course, she finished them, but even she had been laid down in pain. They are just standard strengthening exercises as well. Nothing we haven't done before. Where is this pain coming from? Small Blade thought to herself as she watched the last of the members fall to their knees. She wrote down on a notepad before she looked back at her fallen members. Each of them was sweating profusely. She wondered if she should call the doctor for some of them. They were bleeding from their noses. Not an unusual sight, but a concerning one. 30-minute rest period. We will move on to stage 2 of Naruto-sama's training regimen. We will then end the day with more chakra exercises and then dinner. The rest of the day shall be free study time, she said before she walked away, her legs screaming at her as she did so, a constant pain in them making her lose her balance. Small Blade couldn't believe this. Was she really so undertrained that she couldn't even do simple exercises that civilian gyms did? She couldn't tell if this was humiliating or infuriating. In a small hall, Small Blade stopped. Wait, why would it be infuriating or humiliating? It was simply an order, no more no less. It shouldn't matter what she felt about it. What should she even feel about it? She shouldn't be feeling at all. Feelings and emotions had no place in the life of shinobi. She'd been taught that. It was just another assignment, just another order. However, it hurt so much. It hurt worse than any pain she'd had in training under Danzo. Also, why did her chest hurt? She wanted to go check on the prisoners, but she wondered if she could even do that without falling to her knees. I see you're already feeling the effects of yesterday and last night's training. Surprised, Small Blade turned around and grabbed her tanto before she noticed Naruto leaning against the wall behind her. She quickly tried to salute him before her arm wavered. She groaned as she felt her body curse her for doing what it didn't like. You can drop the salute, Small Blade. I know you're in no condition to try that. You and the rest of the Root members are feeling the sensation of your chakra coils being stretched. Most don't know this, but your chakra coils can contract and expand like a muscle. You're all feeling that sensation for the first time and it's rippling through your body. Your coils aren't used to being stretched. They're used to being strained. There is quite the difference between both those things. To be honest, you look a little frustrated. What's wrong? He asked. Small Blade quickly straightened up. Nothing is wrong, Naruto-sama, she replied. His eyes narrowed. I might be a clone, but I'm not that gullible, Small Blade. I remember about a week ago, I told you to give me a name for yourself. You've yet to even accomplish that task. Now you stand here and lie to my face. You're lucky I'm not Danzo. He'd have made you rot in the hole for that, he replied. Small Blade felt a shiver run through her spine. Though Root agents didn't talk to each other much, there were little tidbits of information one could glean if they listened during the quiet moments. From what she heard, the hole was a place for Usually, the newest root members who didn't understand the importance of protocol. However, it was mainly used for shinobi who failed in their missions. The members were put on a wooden platform that was lowered down into a massive hole of perpetual darkness. There they would stay for one whole month. Food and water were lowered down on a platform every 3 or 4 days. Only the strongest got to eat. The weak had to just persevere in the darkness, the physical and psychological torture being so extreme that some killed themselves just to keep their own sanity. You either equipped yourself with strong, dominating willpower, or you fell into madness and became insane. As far as Small Blade knew, there were only 2 people who had finished such a task. Small Blade didn't know who they were, but she knew there were 2. Confident though she was in her abilities, she did not wish to experience the whole. I'm sorry, Naruto-sama, she said. The clone frowned. And what are you sorry for? He asked. For lying, she said. The clone then leaned off the wall. I don't care about that. Tell me why you lied to me, he said. Small Blade opened and closed her mouth. This situation, it was very uncomfortable. Danzo would have just accepted her apology, punished her, and been on his way. Never had she been more confused about what she was supposed to do. I don't understand, she said. The blonde sighed. Small Blade, you've got a brain. I suggest you use it. You're not a simple drone. You're a being with complex thoughts, emotions, and processes. Think about why you lied. Consider this a lesson for you. If it will help you, then consider this an order, he answered back. An order. Small Blade had the obligation to follow orders. However, this order seemed difficult to complete. Why had she lied? She tried to think about why, but every time she felt like her head was hurting. She had a fierce headache. Thousands of memories she didn't remember moved through her mind. A heap of pain and flashing lights moved from her head and through her eyes. Small Blade stuttered as sweat fell down the side of her face. Naruto frowned. It seems Danzo-kun's conditioning was more drastic than I thought. At this rate, she and the others will likely die from the training in the land of the sea. I hoped stretching the chakra coils in her brain would help undo the damage Danzo did to her, but that likely won't happen. I'll have to give her a head start. I might have to do it to the others as well, he thought with a frown. The clone walked forward and placed a finger to Small Blade's forehead. He pushed a piece of pure chakra into the chakra coils around her mind. He then stepped back and watched Small Blade slowly take her hands from her head. He watched her pant as her mask dropped to the ground. Her blank eyes signifying her heritage as a Hyuga showed forth. For Small Blade, she suddenly seemed more at ease. The flashing lights stopped and a feeling of clarity appeared over her when Naruto touched her forehead. She still didn't have the answer to the question he asked of her, but thinking about it didn't bring her too much pain. When she looked up, she saw him standing over her. At that moment, she seemed to find another answer within her. This man, Uzumaki Naruto, was the most powerful person in the world. To follow him was to follow someone greater than Danzo, Hiruzen, and all those who would come after him. Feeling better? He asked. She knelt in front of him. May I speak truthfully, Naruto-sama? She asked. For the cloned Naruto, his eyes softened. When was the last time he had someone sincerely bow before him like this? He still remembered the days when he sat in his throne room, his wives in their chairs as military generals, and civilians met with him for their needs. Even now, he could still hear the monotone in Small Blade's voice, but there was something in her tone that he liked. It seemed like he hadn't chosen wrong when he tasked her as his right hand. You may, he said softly. Small Blade was beginning to take her first steps. It wouldn't do well for this experiment to encounter a variable on his way of speaking. I don't have it in me to know why I lied. I also don't have it in me to find a preference for my own name. I ask that Naruto-sama helps me understand that I might be able to answer these assignments later. I have failed. I shall accept your punishments, she said. The blonde smiled. Unfortunately, she failed her assignments, but that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Very well, I can agree to that. That you understand something as basic as that proves you're not a lost cause. Then for your failure, I will assign a name to you. When you've come to understand what you need to, then I shall let you rename it. From this day forward, you will be called Raikai, she who seeks understanding. Do you accept? He asked. Small Blade bowed. I accept. Naruto-sama, she said. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki nodded. Good. I will take my leave then. Continue your exercises. I also want you and the other to prepare to leave the village by the end of the week. Such a big group will need to be careful, but we'll be heading into the land of sea. We have to get there before the group from Konoha that I'm assigned to does. The Hokage will no doubt be sending additional forces with us since. Before the end of the week, give me a report of all root agents in the building. I'll separate them into groups of 5, he replied. It will be done, sir, Raikai said. As you were then, Raikai. Make me proud, he said with a smile to the Hyuga before he disappeared in a puff of smoke. When Raikai watched him leave, she touched her chest. Something was painful there. As night settled over Konoha, Tsukuyomi grumbled. Left foot, left, right, left. Ha, I think I've got it. Truly only one such as I could muster the art of walking upon the mortal plane. Now I can release myself from this home of wood and boredom. The moon goddess said to herself. Yes, never had she assumed marriage was so boring. Even her duties as a goddess were more entertaining. Sure, she was glad to be free of her responsibilities, but it lost its appeal after she failed to understand the multiple contraptions that made up the household. Those knobs for the bathroom's body cleaner released a torrent of water over her hair and her clothes. She didn't know how to get undressed, so she was a wet rag walking around a cold room. Never had she had to suffer such indignation from things with no life. Yet, most of all, Tsukuyomi was kind of lonely. Her husband was never home. And not that she needed him home. Hell, the less they interacted the better. However, she didn't like this boredom. She wished she had someone to talk to besides her own thoughts. True, the silence left her some time to organize her thoughts, but Tsukuyomi wasn't a planner. She didn't know anything about strategy. How was she going to give her husband a threat that didn't even exist? Should she get her siblings involved? No, definitely not them. They wouldn't help her. In fact, she was sure they'd just laugh at her misery. That's how it always went when she needed someone's help aside from her subjects. Honestly, Tsukuyomi, I'm always left cleaning up your mess. Hard to believe mother even grants you a domain. A frown, Tsukuyomi sighed and walked back to her bed. I don't need them. I can solve this on my own. I know I can, the goddess of the moon thought before her stomach growled. Dear husband, please hurry home with sustenance. Wasn't the husband supposed to be the provider? A goddess shouldn't go hungry. About 10 minutes of more loneliness passed before Tsukuyomi heard the front door unlock. Too excited to contain herself, but still prideful as a goddess, she slowly got up. Her feet wobbled, but she walked towards the living room area. She saw her husband walk through the door with his clothes torn up and numerous scratch marks across his body. He looked positively ragged. She tried not to laugh at his misfortune. You look like you were mauled by a ferocious beast, dear husband. What happened? She asked. A lot of work, my walking wife. I see you're not stumbling anymore. Had some practice. He returned. Tsukuyomi blushed, but she tried to keep the embarrassment off her face. I indeed. Well, now that you're home, please make with dinner. I am famished. She replied back while his eyebrow twitched. He just got through the worst D-rank mission of his life and his wife just told him to make dinner. He smiled. You know, I feel like someone's not pulling their weight in this marriage. He exclaimed. Tsukuyomi blinked. What does that mean? She asked. Naruto sighed dramatically and leaned against the way. Like, when the husband comes home from work, shouldn't the wife be in an apron and say, welcome back, honey? Would you like dinner, a bath, or, would you like me? Type of thing. I don't even get a welcome home. He fired back at her. Apron. What the hell is an apron? I could never do something like that. I've never shown my body to a man before. Do mortal wives actually do that? Tsukuyomi thought before she nervously laughed and flipped her hair. A mortal like you would be too stunned at my beauty if I gave you the honor. We haven't progressed in our marriage to allow for such a custom just yet. Don't get, she replied. Despite his state, Naruto chuckled. He actually smiled when he looked at her. Nothing about this woman was marryable, but somehow she could make him smile just like his wives. Some might find her godly haughtiness aggravating, but it was kind of funny to see her so flustered. Clearly, the goddess didn't have too much male company. Having rested on the ground, the former emperor sighed and stood to his feet. Well, some other time I guess. Wouldn't want people calling my wife a cradle robber. I am still a young, impressionable boy, he said as he dusted off his clothes. Tsukuyomi blinked. Yeah, wouldn't want people calling her that. Whatever that was. Alright, I'll get dinner started after I take a shower, but you're helping, he exclaimed. He then disappeared behind the corner as Tsukuyomi gawked. Help. She was a goddess. She'd never cooked in her life. Unfortunately for the goddess of the moon, her husband's time in the shower didn't last long enough. He came up, dressed in some bedtime clothes. He then opened his refrigerator and pulled out some cooking supplies. All right, dear wife, all you have to do is cut some carrots with this knife and peel some potatoes. Think you can do that? The blonde asked. Tsukuyomi blinked. Oh, of course I can. Who do you think I am? I am a woman of many talents, she proclaimed while his smile widened. Cool. Have fun, he said as he passed her a steel bowl filled with carrots and potatoes. With their roles assigned, Naruto boiled some water and started cutting up vegetables. He then proceeded with his task of cleaning meat. The hot water stung his hands as he rinsed the chicken and thighs over. I guess we're having chicken and potatoes with carrots today, Naruto thought to himself with a nod of his head. Thud, thud, thud. As he sprinkled various seasonings over his chicken, Naruto heard the constant sound of something hard. When he turned around, he struggled hard to keep from laughing when he saw Tsukuyomi holding the knife by its sharp edge. She grunted as she tried to cut the carrots and he saw the way her fingers trembled. You just can't be honest, can you? Naruto thought as his eyes softened. You suck at cutting, Tsukuyomi. How about you shut the up, you bastard? I said I got it, so I got it. Don't make me shank your off. I could slice that up too. Would you just let me help you? You come over here and this knife's going right through that damn skull of yo. Hey, get your damn hands off me. It's either this, or you take it up with Conan-chan. Quote. I want a divorce. Naruto's smile fell for a moment when he thought of her. Always headstrong, too damn prideful for her own good. He shook his head. Tsukuyomi sometimes wished she could rip her mouth off her face. She felt like an idiot. Well, more of an idiot than she felt lately. Why was this vegetable so hard to cut? It also felt so rough. Was this what some of the cooks had to deal with? Foul vegetable. You will submit to me. Tsukuyomi thought before she shivered when she felt warm hands wrap around her body. Arms not belonging to those of a child slid up hers. They helped her grab the knife by the handle. You're a terrible liar, dear wife. The black-haired goddess turned her head and she noticed not the face of a child. The face of a man was behind her. His golden yellow hair, sharp blue eyes, and prominent features made her eyes widen. She could feel the heat from his chest against her back. It felt so hot she thought she was on fire. What are you doing? How did you get so big? Don't come near. Shish. I won't bite. Unless you want me to. Just using the transformation technique to show you what you'll get in the future, he said. He then grabbed her soft hand and placed it on the carrot. Here, we'll cut them together, he then said to her. The moon goddess felt her mind collapse into 1,000 pieces. She, who had never been so close to a man, felt too many sensations moving through her body at once. Her nose detected the smell of her husband, the scent of a man. It was very strong, but not unpleasant. His rough palms against hers, and his body so closely pushed against hers as he guided her hands to cutting the carrots was making her divine body go weak. See, simple cuts. Nothing too hard or scary about it. There was actually some research that even moonlight helped in the growth of trees, vegetation, and crops. If you think about it, you're making use of what you helped create. Isn't that nice? Naruto asked in her ear. Oh, okay. I understand. You can release me now, she said, focusing on how warm his hands felt as he helped her finish one carrot and move into the next. Do you want me to? He asked. Yes. Yes. She did, but because it felt so nice to be in his arms that it was almost scaring her. She felt like a newborn babe, her legs weak and her arms flimsy. When she looked back at him, she saw that insufferable smirk on his face. He knew exactly what he was doing to her and it infuriated the moon goddess. She'd reigned in the divine plane as one of the most powerful gods for eons, yet she couldn't stand before the gaze of her mortal husband. She'd seen spectacular sights that no one would be able to comprehend, but he was the most profound. Why are you always so infuriating? Tsukuyomi thought to herself. Let's just get this over with before I smite you, she answered as they finished the carrots. Naruto grabbed Tsukuyomi's hand and swayed her to the potatoes. She found herself helpless before her husband, constantly being moved to his whims. However, she couldn't say she found it unpleasant. In fact, she laughed when he twirled her like some dancer. Her excuse for this was that it merely relieved her boredom. There was nothing more to this than that. However, she smiled when the goddess of the moon peeled potatoes. She watched them drop in the steel bowl. There was something oddly pleasing about using her hands when before she'd just be sitting in a chair waving her finger every which way. Before the night went late, the two finished cooking. While they waited for everything to cook, Tsukuyomi gasped and pushed Naruto away. He laughed. Tired of me already? I thought you were having fun, he said. I was granting you my presence. You're lucky I am so generous. She fired back. That's not what I saw, Tsukuyomi-sama. The black-haired woman blinked when she noticed they weren't alone. She turned her head and she noticed Tsukuyomi standing back the window, a curious, yet amused, expression on her face. The goddess of the moon was absolutely mortified. How long have you been there? She asked. I believe it was before or after the first twirl, her servant answered. Tsukuyomi looked at her husband, who turned back into a child. She then looked back at her servant. The two of them completely amused by her actions. Suddenly, the goddess of the moon's hair turned from black to white. On that night, Konoha was graced with the sight of a beautiful meteor shower around the moon. Astronomers and astrologers gasped as rocks outside the realm of the earth flew through the air, wondering what it all meant. Unfortunately, none of them would ever think it was the mortification of a helpless goddess. Naruto and Tsukuyomi ate their food silently while Tsukuyomi watched. The former offered the latter a plate, but she politely declined. Food was nice to eat, but it wasn't required. Why are you here, Tsukuyomi? I didn't summon you, Tsukuyomi said, finally having mastered the art of holding a fork. However, she saw the two sticks in her husband's hands. Were those some other eating utensils? The blonde woman bowed. Yes, Kami-sama has asked for your presence, Tsukuyomi-sama. She knows that Naruto-sama made plans to head into the land of the sea. The people there worship Sujin-sama, the goddess of water. She has a temple erected there. Kami-sama wishes for her daughter to go there so that they might speak, she said. Naruto smirked, but it fell when he noticed his wife's frown. She just stared at her food angrily. Oh, I finally get to meet my mother-in-law? He asked. I would not be sure. It's been said that mortals are forbidden from communing with the gods, but this isn't exactly a normal situation either. I can only say that if she indeed desires to meet with you, then it will be made known to you, Tsukuyomi said. Naruto snorted. Someone was a little haughty, but then again, when you're the goddess of everything, then perhaps you deserve to be. However, that didn't exactly sit right with the blonde. Well, that will be my wife's decision. Whether she desires to go or not is up to her. Clearly, the matter upsets her. We'll talk about it. You're dismissed, he said. Tsukuyomi wanted to speak further, but she could feel her goddess rising anger. She merely bowed and left the room, allowing the former emperor and the goddess to eat in silence. Time seemed to pass by slowly for them both, the pleasant atmosphere having been destroyed by the news. It wasn't long before they finished eating. I'll wash the dishes. You go to sleep, he said. Tsukuyomi's mouth thinned, her mood ruined. Without a word, she stood up and walked away. She opened the door to the bedroom and sat on the bed. True, this wasn't as terrible as she envisioned, but why had her mother given her away so easily? Even more, she completely disregarded the bound laws just for something like this to happen. So many strange circumstances surrounded her one after the other. Her pride as a goddess laid crushed beneath her inability to adapt to mortal life. She couldn't be destined for this. Feeling not so tired, the goddess of the moon spent some time in the bedroom with her own thoughts. She heard her husband walking through the apartment, but he never entered the bedroom. Instead, when it got late enough, he turned out all the lights and went to bed on the couch. Tsukuyomi slipped into the bed and leaned her head on the pillow. As she closed her eyes, the tall woman remembered the feeling of her husband's body and the warmth that provided against her own. She didn't want to admit it, but she didn't find the feeling unappealing. In fact, she almost wished Tsukuyomi hadn't interfered. What am I talking about? Like I would enjoy the company of a mortal. Impossible. That mortal food must have eroded my head. I'll just forget about it, she said as she closed her eyes. Strange. The bed felt very cold, even with the covers. It was also bigger than she remembered. It felt even bigger than her own bed. She had no idea why. Meanwhile, unknown to her, Naruto fell asleep as well. However, neither goddess nor mortal got much rest. The next morning, Tsukuyomi didn't leave the bedroom. So, Naruto changed his clothes quietly and fixed her a small breakfast. He left a tray out the bedroom and scratched his head. I must really be getting old, he thought to himself. Last night, his dreams consisted of Tayuya, Konan, and Tsukuyomi. It was ridiculous. A shake of his head, he grabbed his backpack, created the clone to go work at Ichiraku, and left his house. Yeah, one night of little fun wasn't gonna make them anything resembling a husband or wife. Probably, nothing would. He quietly closed the door and headed off to meet with his team. The cold morning air on his face shook away the unnecessary thoughts as he continued to work out the rest of the day. So many things to do and so little time to do them in. When he appeared at Training Ground 3, he saw Sasuke and Sakura waiting for him tiredly. You two aren't morning people, are you? Naruto asked. Sakura snarled. I don't count 3 hours before 8 morning. I hope we don't have to chase that cat again. I still haven't fixed my hair, she said with a groan. Naruto shook his head. Clearly, Sakura still didn't have her priorities right, but what could he say? He guessed women really cared about their hair. That seemed to be a universal concept no matter what world someone went to. Have you been told if you'll inherit both clans? Came the voice of Uchiha Sasuke. Naruto seemed a little surprised. He didn't think there'd ever be a working relationship that involved him and Sasuke talking to each other. Clearly, he was wrong. No idea. Gigi hasn't told me any information about Tsunade returning to the village. If she doesn't, then I'll be named the Senju clan heir. Regardless of that, I'm unofficially the Uzumaki heir. It just hasn't been announced yet. I'll officially be the head of both clans when I turn 16, he said. Sasuke slowly nodded. Yeah, that was the same for him. Because he was still underaged, he couldn't get hold of the Uchiha funds from the entire clan. Those funds were controlled by the council. Once he turned 16, those would be turned over to him. Right. I also heard that clan heirs, when they reach 14, are supposed to take political classes since you'll need to make connections with civilian and military leaders. You'll also need to rebuild your clans. Maybe with a wife. Sakura exclaimed as she looked at Sasuke. The Uchiha scoffed. He would only rebuild his clan when his brother lay dead at his feet. Not before then. Well, Sakura's got a point. If you thought the academy was bad, Sasuke, just wait until you're the Uchiha head. Many people will want you to marry their daughters. Probably the same for me, Naruto chuckled while Sakura laughed. Sorry Naruto. I don't think you being the clan heir of every clan in the world could get a girl to love you enough to marry you. The pink-haired girl said. The thought that anyone would find someone like Naruto attractive enough to marry just wasn't possible. The only way that happened was if the woman wasn't from Earth. However, Sakura soon noticed she was the only one laughing. She shivered when she saw Naruto's eyes. He turned his head away and looked up at the sunless sky. Keep that childish girl-like mentality, Sakura. One day you'll learn, you don't need love to marry someone, he said as he thought of his wife back home. He thought to go and speak with her, but he wasn't sure what he could say to make her feel better. What did he know of gods and the like? Sakura and Sasuke heard the sadness in Naruto's voice, but neither commented on it. As for Sakura, she frowned. Who would marry someone they didn't love? That made absolutely no sense. No way could she marry anyone else other than Sasuke. The very idea was deplorable to the young Kunoichi. The three stood in silence until they watched Kakashi arrive. He noticed them all. My, did we all wake up on the wrong side of the bed? Well, I know how we can all get energized. Let's do some training. Get all that negative energy out of us. Maybe we'll do 1 or 2D rank missions after today if you all grasp what I'm about to teach you, Kakashi said. Sakura blinked. More training. But we're pretty strong already. She exclaimed. Kakashi smiled. Oh, so then if I pit the two of you against Naruto again, you'll easily dominate him? He asked. The pink-haired girl shivered before she looked at the playful grin on the blonde's face. Sasuke glared at the blonde, but he didn't say anything. It made him incredibly angry, but he still didn't think he could beat Naruto. If he couldn't even take down Naruto, then what did that mean for Itachi? Then again, they say training is the food for the body. Heh, 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 Sakura laughed to herself as Kakashi nodded. Glad you see things my way. Now then, while we head into the training ground, shall we all have a refresher course? Who here can tell me what the most important thing a shinobi needs is? Kakashi asked. Truth be told, he was only asking this of Sasuke and Sakura. However, he couldn't very well let them know that their blonde teammate was from the further, and likely stronger than every single ninja in the village. Chakra? Sakura asked. Precisely, Sakura. Very good. Now, can anyone here tell me what chakra is? Kakashi asked. Again, neither Naruto nor Sasuke said anything. Truth be told, the blonde looked at the silver-haired man, but Kakashi could only plead that he not answer. It'd be a little hard to explain about the future's definition of chakra, and that would cause too many questions to be answered. A roll of his eyes, the blonde remained silent. So, was this what they called the suppression of intellect? Naturally, Kakashi knew they couldn't keep this up forever. At best he hoped to tell them after they arrived in the land of sea. Once they started training in these strengthening methods, then hopefully that would be a good time for Naruto's true intellect to show itself. Naruto told them back in the Hokage mansion of the exercises they needed to undertake to start training them in the ways of pure chakra and using it with the chakra veins hidden within the world. Apparently, the training was so intense that, if unprepared, one could die. He sighed. Sakura, explain please, he said. Sakura nodded. Well, chakra is the elemental life energy that shinobi use in ninjutsu, genjutsu, and taijutsu. It's the source of all our power and abilities. This energy has two forms. Physical energy, which exists within every cell in the human body, all working together, and spiritual energy, the primal source of power which is intensified through training and experience. Naturally, these two types of energy must be drawn out and formed together to become chakra. It's the balance of the spiritual and physical which plays the key. We use hand signs to focus the chakra and perform the jutsu, she answered. Kakashi smiled. Right on all points. I can see Iruka-sensei truly did have a gifted bunch of students, he said before he noticed Naruto using 2 fingers to massage the left side of his temple. Maybe the young man didn't get as much sleep as he thought. Unfortunately, it wasn't the sleep that gave Naruto the headache. He was going to have so much pleasure correcting every point in that explanation. Then again, he tried not to hold it against them. He'd just have to take this blissful ignorance in stride. His time would come. He only prayed it came soon. Oblivious to Naruto's thoughts, Kakashi nodded. Indeed, those are the basic elements of what chakra is. As of right now, you've all been using it unwisely. You've been casting jutsu, pouring your chakra in, hoping that you succeed. I hope you don't think you've mastered it. You've barely scratched the surface of its potential. No single jutsu uses the same amount of chakra. You must carefully assign a portion to it and distribute it accordingly. Because you don't manage it properly, you run the risk of using it all. Once it's gone, you're left like a helpless lamb just waiting to be slaughtered. He exclaimed. Sakura gulped while Sasuke's eyes hardened. Then what do we do to master it? He asked. That's simple. Train so hard that you don't even have to think about controlling it. Train so hard that you're sore for days, even weeks. Put your life on the line for your training. He said. Well, how do we do that? She asked as they all entered the field. A breeze of wind blew through the hair of Team 7 as Kakashi chuckled. Well, that's simple. Just climb a tree, he said. Sakura and Sasuke looked at him like he was insane while Naruto's mouth thinned. So what do you all think? Hiruzen asked as Shikaku, Inoichi, Homura, Kaharu, and the leader of the Anbu Black Ops. All of them looked over the scroll that Naruto handed the Sandaime yesterday, its contents detailing the inefficiency of three-man cells, the power of pure chakra, the type of exercises to use, the power and theory behind ninjutsu, genjutsu, and taijutsu. It spoke of the structure of shinobi and the possible collapse of Konoha society. Each point seemed to expound upon the last, which left everyone speechless. Sarutobi couldn't blame them. He'd been left without sleep all night trying to comprehend what he'd been given. Shikaku looked at everything in shock. It actually makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. It makes so much sense it's a little scary. Hokage-sama, might I ask for a complete list of all active and inactive Jonin and Shunin? He asked. Hiruzen turned to the head Anbu. The masked figure nodded and sent another Anbu away. It wasn't long before they returned with two large files given to the Hokage. Sarutobi handed the files to the Jonin commander, who placed them on the table. The Nara head then opened them and looked through each of them. As he looked through them, Inoichi did as well. He's right. The Jonin discrepancy when compared to the Genin discrepancy is almost equal. If you take into account the number of Genin who die on the average mission compared to the average Jonin that dies on higher missions, it's actually almost equal, since the Genin cells are formed in groups of 3. If that's the case, in these times of peace, the number of Jonin has increased from what it was when Nadaime-sama implemented the three-man cell. He created it because there was a need for more forces and not enough elite Jonin to train them. It was around the time of the First Great Shinobi War, and there weren't many Jonin at the time. It was efficient to have one Jonin for 3 Genin to allow for more available resources. However, with these numbers, the answer is no longer three-man cells. When clients look at prospective shinobi, they don't look at the cells. They value the individual. It is then through collaborative missions that the Genin learn teamwork from the Jonin and other Genin. The answer is 1 Jonin to 1 Genin, Shikaku said. Homura and Kaharu looked over the files. The boy even estimated the Jonin and Genin numbers of the other 4 nations by their economic standing and their likely numbers for the next 5 years, the latter said. I guess being from the future really holds weight. Apprenticeship is the most efficient use now. Because there are 3 Genin, the Jonin's attention is divided, forcing them to split the lessons to accommodate all 3. However, such isn't the same for a protege or apprentice. It would actually make sense if we let Sasuke become the sole student of someone like Kakashi. Meanwhile, the clan heirs could learn more from Jonin within their own families. Those not from clan backgrounds can be placed through a select program to figure out their strengths and who best to guide them, Inoichi replied. Hiruzen spread out the papers, and moved his hands through the scroll that Naruto gave them. Would that not cause a rise in clan tensions? It was that very reason that Hashirama wished to create Konoha, to end the warring of the clans, he answered. Yes, but look here, Hokage-sama. Back during the clan wars there was a major discrepancy between the resources and the standing of the nobles and local daimyo in the area. Now that the villages have been established, it's much too difficult for a clan to go solo without the resources of a village. Plus, if a clan goes solo, then they run the risk of what happened to the Uzumaki. Many will try to claim them, and if they aren't claimed, then they will be wiped out. They would have no choice but to secede to the fact that there is a use in them still being a part of a larger community. Have you any idea how many nations would swarm the Hyuga if they went solo? I doubt they'd survive a month, maybe 2 weeks, he answered. It seems Naruto-san has also thought of a solution for that. Many people place values on the clans. His answer seemed to be that we need to make the average shinobi just as good as those of the clan heirs, and that seemed to be one of the benefits of pure chakra. If this can be properly studied and implemented by average shinobi, it could break the barrier between regular shinobi and the clans, Homura replied. However, if the pure chakra works that way, then if an average shinobi learns it and the clan member doesn't, it only brings the average up to them. If the clan learns it, then they have a leap again. Unless, there is an aspect of the chakra that I'm missing, the Anbu leader said to the rest of them. Hiruzen frowned and looked over the scroll. It seems that the power of pure chakra lies not only in one's physical and spiritual energy, but also in the world energy as well. It had been researched before about the origins of chakra and how it came to be. Naruto claims this chakra is also able to be expanded based on the will of the individual. The average shinobi with a strong will can become stronger than a clan heir with a weak will. Whether you become powerful or not, depends on you and not any other circumstances, Hiruzen replied. Well, you can't exactly train will, Koharu said. Not, but you can instill it. Based on Naruto's notes, it was these invaders that first gave the world its chakra. He claims that the Sage of Six Paths was born from this race. If that's the case, then they have a greater command over this chakra than we do, and they've been doing it for years. We also have no idea where their spies are. He said we lose badly, so it was likely an inside job to weaken the infrastructure of all the nations. By his own words, by the time we all came together to combat the threat, it was already too late. We'll need every advantage we can get, Shikaku replied. And the first chakra vein is in the land of the sea. If his team goes, then we'll obviously need Naruto-san to explain how to work with this new chakra. Has there been any word from Jiraiya-sama or Tsunade-sama? Inoichi asked. Hiruzen sighed. Tsunade still remains elusive as ever. However, I did my duty as the Hokage and left her a letter to be sent in every secret Konoha station around the nations. If she doesn't go, then that will be her own fault. As for Jiraiya, I will send for him when the results fully show themselves. I also wanted us to prepare for the Chunin exams. It seems there's a chance we will be attacked by Iwa and Suna with Orochimaru. Naruto-kun told me the casualties were heavy in his time, he stated. Shikaku rubbed his head and laughed tiredly. It just never stops with him. If that's the case, Hokage-sama, then, I think we will need Danzo as well, Shikaku said. Inoichi nodded and so did the Anbu leader. Homura and Koharu sealed his decision with nods of their own. Hiruzen looked at them all and sighed. He hated today. Truth be told, today went better than Kakashi expected. Naruto and Sakura got the tree exercise on the first try, which left Sasuke as the only one unable to do it. No doubt seeing the dead last and the kunoichi beating him was infuriating, but true to form, Naruto offered the Uchiha some advice to use. He didn't hold it over the brunette. Instead, like a wise old man, he instructed Sasuke on the best ways to gauge his levels of needed chakra. Though reluctant to accept the help, Sasuke soon found himself running up and down the trees like the other two. After that, Kakashi started teaching them all the basics of Shuriken Jutsu and rough taijutsu practice. He offered Sakura a scroll on Genjutsu and Sasuke a fire technique. However, he didn't give one to Naruto. When asked about it, Kakashi just laughed. I don't think Naruto's lacking for jutsu right now. He just needs training. And speaking of training, I think some more laps are in order. Chop chop. The Jonin said. Sakura groaned in misery. She didn't want to get sweaty again. As expected, while Sakura and Sasuke laid on the ground thoroughly exhausted, Naruto only broke out into a moderate sweat. He could only shake his head at them both. He was going to have to come up with something for their stamina. Sakura was much too weak, at least physically. Of course, Sasuke wasn't that strong either, but he was obviously more developed than Sakura. One could theorize that was simply from the natural strength barrier between boys and girls, but the blonde already saw the signs. Unlike his world's Sakura, this one obviously didn't physically train too much outside of the academy. He walked over to Kakashi. Kakashi-kun, what were Sakura's grades in taijutsu? He asked. The one-eyed shinobi scratched his chin. If I recall, she got an A in taijutsu, but it was noted that she had problems with her stamina. She also had trouble thinking outside the box. She's the perfect example of following things by the book. One of the reasons for that exercise was to get her out of that thinking. Why do you ask? Kakashi questioned. She'll die if she goes to the land of the sea like this. She got winded after 30 laps around the pond. We have to at least get her up to Sasuke's level, and even he barely makes it. If he was supposed to be the strongest of the academy, then I fear what will become of the others if changes aren't made, the blonde replied. Quickly, Kakashi's nonchalant attitude vanished. Is it that tough? He asked. I'll help as best I can, but the struggles that everyone goes through are different. She's gonna complain, but give her this training regimen. If she does it diligently, then maybe she'll make it. You're gonna need some paper for this, Naruto said. Kakashi sighed. He didn't know whether to pity the poor girl or not as he wrote down what the girl was supposed to do. The more he wrote, the more the Jonin shivered. He wondered if the poor girl was gonna die before she even got to the land of sea. Once Naruto was done, he walked back to his team while Kakashi joined them. Excellent work, you guys. Now, Sakura, I notice you were the last one to finish again. I hope you understand the responsibilities and dangers of the shinobi world. It's not all about trying to make yourself look good. Here, I've devised a schedule for you that should keep you on par with Sasuke and Naruto. Do make sure you follow it, he said as he handed her a piece of paper. Sakura tiredly grabbed the paper and looked at it. Her body immediately froze. Her eyes rolled in the back of her head. She then passed out. Naruto shook his head as did Sasuke, but the latter glared at the former. Just how behind was he in comparison to Naruto? Give me a training regimen too. Sasuke exclaimed. Naruto and Kakashi looked at the Uchiha heir. The latter looked at the former. The blonde nodded. The Jonin smiled. Well, you know me, Sasuke. I care about all my cute genin. I'll give you yours tomorrow. You're a bit of a special case, he said. The Uchiha quickly nodded before the group got into more training. Sakura got into her mini-hell program while Naruto and Sasuke, mostly Sasuke, sparred for the purpose of practicing their taijutsu. After that, they were given individual practice time. For that whole hour, Naruto meditated, focusing the veins of pure chakra in his body, exercising them and strengthening them. This body was much too weak. He had to refine everything from scratch again, but that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. In as little as 2 years, he'd be back in his prime. Then from there, he would ascend further. When individual training was done, the group finally did a total of 4D rank missions. They shopped for some elderly people, they carried timbers for some of the carpenters in the village, and other menial tasks. By the end of it, the group was thoroughly exhausted. Kakashi dismissed them all and Naruto quickly returned home. He climbed up the steps to his and he smiled when he saw Tsubaki standing there, well more like leaning against the wall, waiting for him. When she noticed him, she leaned up. Seeing as you're here and not cursing me to hell, I take it you've got good news. He asked. The young woman felt her lips squirm for a moment before she sighed. Can you promise that I'll be doing nothing illegal or that would go against my moral code? She asked. Shinobi have moral codes? He asked back. Despite the obvious question, she laughed. Please allow me to use the term moral loosely, she answered back to him. He chuckled and walked over to his apartment door. I promise you won't have to do any of the like. In fact, I hope that what you'll help me with will become a new pedestal in shaping the world itself. Come inside, let's have a brief. Naruto didn't get to finish before he heard a loud crash behind his door. He stared at his door and Tsubaki stared at him. Unknown to him, she was already rethinking her choice in this endeavor. Talk. Would you excuse me for one moment? He asked as he opened his door and stepped inside. Tsubaki blinked and waited outside the Kyuubi Jinchuriki's apartment. She stiffened when she heard the sounds of a hammer, wrench, and other construction sounds. The Chunin also thought she heard Naruto gasp in shock before a stampede of steps moved over his house. After 5 minutes, he stepped out the door and ran down the stairs. Another minute passed before he returned, sweating profusely. He panted and clutched his chest with a water bottle in one of his hands. Should I come back later? Tsubaki asked. She hoped he said yes. No. Let's go inside. I just had to clean up a little bit. I wasn't expecting company. I'm ready, he wheezed out while he downed the water in his bottle. Once the blonde caught his breath, he opened the door. Tsubaki cautiously stepped inside. She noticed nothing out of place. The apartment was very clean. It wasn't what she expected of a boy's house, but he did say he cleaned up a little bit. However, where was that hammer and wrench she thought she heard? Anyway, Tsubaki took off her shoes while Naruto turned to her. Would you like something to drink, or something to eat? I can make something quickly if you'd like, he said, trying to be a good host. They would be working together in the coming future. He hoped to maintain a proper relationship with her. No, thank you. I had a proper meal before I came over here, but some water or tea would be nice, she said. Naruto nodded and took out a pot. The former lover of Mizuki noticed a massive dent in the steel cookware, but wisely she didn't say anything. How did that happen? Once the tea was served, Naruto sat her at the table in his living room. He took a seat on the opposite side of the table. They both allowed for a bit of silent ambience to fill the room before the Chunin finally spoke. So, what exactly do you need me to do? She asked. Truth be told, I wanted to have this conversation a little later after the Hokage brought certain topics to light, but we can set that aside for now. I want to run a myriad of tests regarding a new type of chakra. Well, let me step back, I probably shouldn't call it new. It was researched and utilized by another village. I have reason to believe they lacked not only the scientific know-how, but also proper training in making use of it. It has to do with Hoshigakure and their unique chakra training, he said. Tsubaki frowned as she fingered her cup. You mean the Hoshigakure star method? How did you learn that? She asked. Naruto shrugged. Merchants can't keep their mouths shut when they talk business. It was a good chance to work on my stealth skills, he lied. He learned about it from not only Danzo's memories, but also his notes. The man clearly had an extensive network of spies in almost every other village, looking into methods to both strengthen Konoha and weaken other nations. Now the blonde was excited, he finally got the chance to actually study the Hoshigakure star training. It had been thoroughly, and mysteriously, eradicated way before he was born. Only a few survivors of the village and rumors of what it could do were left to him, even then it wasn't much to go off of. Every theory about it brought no fruit. To actually condense and train chakra from the energy of a meteorite. It was well worth looking into. I wouldn't recommend it. I've had the pleasure of going to Hoshigakure a few times. Despite their unique chakra, they are a rather sickly bunch. Such power seems to have a cost, she said. Naruto hummed. Sickly, was it? By that statement, they probably weren't sickly before the meteorite. Perhaps the energy given off that rock from outside the earth brought some unexpected consequences. That seemed to be a common issue with the Hoshigakure in his world as well. Maybe that explained their disappearance. All power usually does, but remember, my chakra's not quite what you'd expect of normal chakra. I think they've discovered the next step in not just the evolution of shinobi society, but also for regular people as well. They just haven't properly honed it, he said. Truth be told, Tsubaki didn't feel convinced, but she was never one for science talk. Already she found herself astounded by Naruto's notable intellect. She never expected this from what many called the worst of the academy. Then again, many people, even in her class, became prominent shinobi from low standing. It wasn't impossible. It just didn't happen very often. At the very least, it didn't happen this quickly. Well, the Hoshigakure meteorite is one of their most prized treasures. They wouldn't let us study it. I'm afraid unless you can call another one magically down from the sky, then you won't have much. Also, it'd be impossible to do it without Hokage-sama knowing, she said. Naruto shook his head. Don't worry about that. In fact, once I present my findings to him, I think he'll be too intrigued to continue the research. Besides, this'll also give you a leg up in your career as a kunoichi, he said. The young woman tapped the table. It was true that her career stagnated a little bit. She had thought about making it to Jonin, but she just wasn't as talented or devoted as others. She trained when she could, but finding someone to instruct her in her path wasn't easy. Plus, Mizuki always discouraged her, claiming that it was okay to just let others do what they were good at. And if there are side effects? She asked. That's why I'll be going first. I already have a place for us to work, but as you said we won't be able to do much until we get something worth studying. However, I've been studying some of the star movements. You also remember when we got that beautiful starfall yesterday. I think we're bound for a few samples. Also, you have my word, if we do something you're uncomfortable with then you're allowed to leave and not take part, he said. Well, Tsubaki couldn't say a lot, but at least the young man was reasonable. He did save her mother so she didn't feel she had a right to refuse. That said, it was nice that he still allowed her the choice. I can agree to that. If prior responsibilities don't call me away, then I'll be at your disposal if you want. I always did want to be at the forefront of human history, she said. Naruto chuckled. Perfect. I'll be in contact with you. I think we'll know when one falls from the sky, he said. Tsubaki laughed and agreed. It'd be hard to cover that up if it happened near the village, but if the young boy had a harmless experiment to run, then who was she to deny him? The two spent about another hour or so talking. The young Kunoichi wondered if she was even talking to a child. She could have sworn she was talking to an adult. In fact, he was using words that even she had trouble understanding. He explained what he assumed the benefits of exercising chakra from a meteorite could be. Unfortunately, it was all speculation, for he'd never researched such a thing before. Either way, Tsubaki left and Naruto closed his door. He sighed and leaned against the wall. Quote, I want a divorce. How did she manage to get my refrigerator stuck to the ceiling? She even got the shower head into the freeze. It shouldn't even be that long. The blonde thought before he finally sighed and stood to his feet. When he walked into his bedroom, he saw his wife on his bed. How do you find ways to always destroy my house? He asked. The foul snake head of water assaulted me. I merely responded in kind. For burning my skin, I placed it in the frozen mouth of cold waters for its punishment, she replied, turning her head away. And how did it get on my ceiling? He asked. Tsukuyomi's cheeks brightened. So many questions. Do not seek the gods. Advice on every matter, dear husband. She stuttered while he closed his eyes and smiled. What had he gotten himself into? The Kyuubi Jinchuriki exhaled before his expression hardened. I'm going to be leaving the village tonight. I'll be headed to the land of sea. It won't be long before the Hokage assigns my team the mission to go over there. I need to take the root agents over there to get them started on their training. I'll then set up a seal where they can work separately from the Konoha group. Do you want to go with me? He asked. Tsukuyomi frowned as her fingers moved through the sheets of her husband's bed. Yes, he would be heading into the land of the sea where she needed to go to the temple to commune with her mother and the other gods. No, she didn't want to go. Or you could stay here and continue to get assaulted by inanimate objects, her husband suggested. Then again, there was no time like the present. A goddess would not shirk her responsibilities. I will meet with my mother and my siblings, she replied as she moved her long legs off the bed. For a moment, Naruto found himself mesmerized by the way his lovely wife's legs moved. He chuckled. Oh, there was the desire that he thought he lost after dying in his old age. Well, that was a problem. Curse this young, hormone-filled body. Why are you staring at me? Tsukuyomi asked. She didn't know why, but she found his focused gaze unsettling. However, again, it wasn't unpleasant. She just wasn't used to being looked upon with such intensity. It reminded her of last night and just how close her first man held her in his arms. Naruto blinked. Sorry. Well, I'll be leaving tonight. I'll leave a clone here to come over with the team in the coming days. You'll be coming with me, he said as he held out his hand. Tsukuyomi looked down at his hand and grabbed it. He pulled her up. When she stood, her husband cleared his throat. By the way, dear wife, think you can summon a meteorite? He asked as he picked her up in his arms. Summon a WHAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAA workshops. With Naruto coating them in pure chakra, no one would be able to see them no matter what kind of detection jutsu they tried as they headed for the root base. After they arrived, the former emperor and the goddess of the moon stood in front of Raikai and the rest of the Anbu forces. He stared at them and he smirked. He could sense their chakra signatures. They had already improved. The difference in density of their chakra from before to now was easily noticeable. Of course, there would still need to be some training, but that would be fixed. You've all worked hard. I'm proud of you. However, don't think that means I'm gonna take it easy on you. In fact, we're about to get tougher. Now, I want you all to pack what things you think you might need. We're heading into the land of the sea. Even if you don't say anything, I know you wonder about the secret to my strength, he said. Naruto then concentrated his hand and everyone gasped when they saw a white flame surround it. His chakra is so strong it's visible. There isn't even a lot of it yet, Raikai thought to herself while the Kyuubi Jinchuriki smirked. This is pure chakra. You'll be learning and using it as well. To make use of it requires arduous training and a use for the world's chakra veins. Don't feel concerned for not knowing they exist. Nearly everyone on this earth isn't aware of them. Some of those veins lie within the earth and there. I will help you train and instruct you as you integrate with this new form of chakra. I warn you, it's going to hurt a lot. Some days you'll feel so sick you can't move, other days you'll walk one step and the ground beneath your feet will crumble. That is where you will be for the next few months. Don't think about returning here. Understand? He said. Yes, Naruto-sama. They all said much louder than he remembered. Small Blade must have done some good with all of them. That was good. They could try and keep their emotionless faces, but they'd be showing their true colors soon enough. Good. You're dismissed. I expect all of you. The blonde paused when he saw an unusual sight. One of the Root Anbu had a hand raised. He acknowledged them. Naruto-sama, will there be enough space for all of us individually or will we be separated into groups? They asked. The blonde smirked. There will be a mixture of both. Worry not, you'll have the time to work on yourselves and work with each other. However, your success only depends on you and you alone. If you want to be strong, then that depends on your will to obtain it. I expect you all back here in half an hour, he said. Hi. They all proclaimed as they started to walk off. Meanwhile, Raikai landed next to Naruto and Tsukuyomi. Here are the folders for the Root members, Naruto-sama. Per your request, I've also provided a report of rations and provisions, she said. Naruto took the folder and smiled. Thank you, Raikai. Good work. Release the 2 prisoners from their cells. Instruct them about what we're doing. Then, you're dismissed as well, he said with a smile. Small Blade bowed and left. This gave the husband and wife their privacy. Why must they wear the masks? It is quite unsettling, Tsukuyomi said. It's easier to follow orders when you don't have to look at yourself in the mirror, he responded. Unfortunately, the goddess didn't know what he meant. She was too busy trying to fix her hair from the travel she had to endure under her husband. She hoped she didn't have to be here very long. These young people were a little creepy. Their monotone voices reminded her of Susanoo. She hoped such a fate befell to no one else. Naruto noticed his wife's mood, but he didn't say anything. She didn't seem to be in the right frame of mind to talk to him. Maybe they'd share husband and wife secrets with each other at some point, but obviously that wasn't now. Once the half hour passed, all the Root members stood in front of Naruto. All of them had their stuff packed and ready to go. Good. Now, let's go. Don't worry about the barrier around the village. It won't notice us in the slightest. I hope you all got enough rest because we're running from the land of fire and through the land of tea. We'll probably only stop one day to rest before we continue moving. The Hokage's going to send my team to the land of the sea soon and I want you all properly ingrained before they show up. Now, let's move out. He said. Hi, Naruto-sama. They all said as the blonde turned to Tsukuyomi. The goddess grimaced. But I just finished my hair. She exclaimed. I'll be sure to go very slowly for you then, dear wife. He said as he picked her up in his arms. Once again, Tsukuyomi felt her breath short when she felt the arms of a man around her long body. She grabbed his neck, the helplessness of her own body in the care of her husband not doing much for her pride. Then again, should she even have any pride left? It seemed to be in tatters ever since she'd become married to this headache of a mortal. When Naruto exited the base, so too did the Root members. Then, under the cover of night, they ran to the walls of Konoha. The heir to the Uzumaki and Senju clans covered the entire group in pure chakra. They all then hopped over the walls and dashed off before any wall guard or barrier division member could detect them. Away from Konoha, Naruto, Tsukuyomi, and over 50 members of Root ran through the trees of Fire Country towards the south. Tsukuyomi was a very busy person. As her mistress second in command, she took care of the tasks that were deemed too menial for Tsukuyomi to handle. Doing most of that was hard enough, but with the goddess of the moon's descension to mortal life, that left a wide vacancy for the territory of the moon. One could imagine who had to overtake that task. Now, the good thing about that was, the blonde didn't have to work on the menial tasks anymore. She assigned someone else to do that. The bad thing was that, the non-menial tasks were so much harder. Over the eons, Tsukuyomi clearly underestimated just how many worlds Tsukuyomi monitored on a daily basis. She had to provide blessings for moon offerings and lunar harvests. She had to keep oceans from rising too high and nearly wiping out various worlds. How did her mistress handle all this? It's only 100 years or so. I hope Tsukuyomi-sama returns soon. Tsukuyomi thought to herself as she swiped through worlds within range of her domain. Unfortunately, she was still only a lesser god. There were a few matters she needed Tsukuyomi's approval on, but she didn't want to interrupt her mistress' fun. When the blonde thought of her master, she sighed. It had been a long time since she'd seen her smile like that, especially with a man. Well, that had been the only time she'd seen the goddess of the moon have such joy on her face when in the presence of a man. It was well known throughout the divine realm that Tsukuyomi seemed to feel much hesitance when in the presence of men. Given that she was a virgin goddess, perhaps it was because it put her at risk with her duties. It was such that she actively avoided her brothers. This led to her having a rather strained relationship with her sisters in turn. The goddess of the moon just didn't work well with anyone. Plus, she was pretty damn clumsy. A world had been drowned by waters because she failed to alert the people to the prophecy about the moon. Ever since then, everyone seemed to be critical of her, and that stress only isolated her more. While she didn't ask for anyone's help, she didn't offer it either, least of all to her brothers. When Tsukuyomi mentioned the news, she'd seen her mistress' face. Clearly, she was upset at her predicament. Her entire life now seemed tied to someone that she hated due to her own screw-up. Indeed, these actions have consequences, but Tsukuyomi wondered if this was really the best result. This only served to grow animosity between Tsukuyomi and her mother. Tsukuyomi, I have need of you. The minor goddess gasped when she pushed her thoughts to the side and stood to her feet. Tsukuyomi-sama. Yes, I shall do your will. The blonde replied as she used her divine essence to wrap around her body, turning her hair from gold to white. My husband and I are headed to Sujin's domain in this world. Inform her to send someone to pick us up at the lands of T. Also, do we have a meteorite? Tsukuyomi asked. What? She asked. A meteorite. Make one land for my husband. I know how it sounds. Just do it. Preferably near his village. Tsukuyomi said before the mental connection was cut. Tsukuyomi opened and closed her mouth several times. This is not what I thought I would be doing with my time, she thought before she looked through the world's starry realm for a piece of rock that would satisfy her mistress and her husband. Once that was done, she guided it towards the earth. Hopefully, this one would create an apocalypse like some other worlds. Maybe she'd trim it down a little bit. In Konoha, the morning rose. A Naruto clone stood at his team's meeting place before he was joined by Sasuke and a thoroughly exhausted Sakura. Why do you look so beat up? The blonde asked. You try running around a quarter of the village in 10 minutes. Then I had to deal with this large man with massive eyebrows running next to me talking about youth. I never wanted to pull my own hair out more than then. She exclaimed angrily. Despite her ranting, Naruto smiled. So that guy hasn't changed no matter the world he's in. To be proclaimed as a student under a taijutsu expert like guy brought you endless opportunities. He was the only man that could match Tsunade in true hand-to-hand combat. Not many could stand up to him. I believe there was even a mountain named after him, he thought to himself before the three noticed Kakashi come up to them. Good morning, everyone. How about we continue our trend on missions? I'm feeling lucky today. Maybe we'll get something good, he said with a wide smile on his face. It better be better than watching brats or cleaning out the Inuzuka kennels. I'd rather die, Sasuke thought with a deep snarl on his face as the team began their march towards the Hokage mansion and the mission desk. While they walked, Naruto gave Kakashi a training menu for Sasuke. The Jonin looked it over and sighed. Maybe he should pity the Uchiha more than Sakura. Once they were lined up, Team 7 quickly noticed they weren't alone. They saw a lot of Chunin and Jonin scientists in the room. Sakura quickly noticed the fathers of Ino and Shikamaru there as well. Not only that, but they also saw a few Anbu standing with them. The Hokage was also behind the desk this time. Why are all of these elite shinobi here? Did something happen? Sakura whispered to Kakashi, but the man just smiled at her. She then stiffened when all their eyes fell on Team 7. Ah, the final pieces are here. Hello, Team 7. I'm sure you're here for another D-rank mission, but I'm afraid that will have to be put on hold for now. In honor of your record, Kakashi bargained with me that maybe I could show some leniency and offer you a C rank mission. Do you think you can handle it? Hiruzen asked. Sasuke, Sakura, and the Naruto clone looked at each other before they firmly nodded. Seeing this, Sarutobi smiled. He eyed Naruto for a moment before he nodded as well. Very good. This C-rank mission will be an assistant mission. Scientists will be sent to monitor a strange occurrence in the land of the sea. It has been labeled as a breakthrough which could revolutionize shinobi society. We're just lucky we discovered it first. You'll be assisting them in their investigation, he said. If this is a C-rank mission, then why are all these Chunin and Jonin here? Sasuke asked. While he was happy to have a mission, something felt wrong about all of this. Hiruzen smiled. They will be the partakers of this revolutionary discovery. I'm sure they will explain to you all the science behind it and what your duties will be. As this is a C-rank mission, there should be little to no encounters with enemy shinobi, but if there are, then you are to let the appropriate forces handle them. Since you've accepted, you'll be under the command of your clients, he said. Shikaku quickly stood in front of them. Alright, now that we're all here, we'll get ready. We leave in 1 or 2 hours. That should give enough time for Team 7 to get ready. We'll meet at the gates of Konoha. Make sure you're on time. It'd be a drag to track you down, he said. Sakura gulped. She felt very much out of place. Even Sasuke stared at them all like he wondered if he should even be here. Yet, it was Naruto who gave a confident smirk. He and the Hokage shared a look of acknowledgement before they returned to their separate duties. Kakashi dismissed his team and the 3 genin went on their way. Unfortunately, for the clone, there wasn't much to do with the time. It just walked through the village, taking in the differences between its world and this one before the 2 hours passed. Once the meeting time was upon him, he walked to the gates of Konoha and he saw his team waiting for him, each of them with backpacks. He also noticed a few of the Chunin and Jonin looking at him. He just offered them a pleasant wave of the hand. They awkwardly waved back before continuing in their silent conversations. Sasuke narrowed his eyes at these things, but he just assumed it was nothing. People glaring or staring at Naruto wasn't anything new. The Dobi was known for doing stupid things sometimes, but now he wondered if that was just a part of his persona as an idiot. The Uchiha wondered of the blonde's true strength. Had what he displayed truly been all of what he was capable of? Shikaku, Inoichi, and the head Anbu quickly distinguished themselves from everyone. Alright, we're headed out. From here we will journey through Tea Country. We have a contact at the docks who will allow us to sail into the land of the sea. Remember, at best our nation is neutral with theirs. Start no trouble and there should be no trouble. The people there are known to worship the goddess of the sea, Sujin. Do nothing to offend them or our mission will be in trouble. Let's go, he said. The Anbu quickly vanished, already choosing their own route to the land of the sea. No one questioned it. It would be rather odd for Anbu Black Ops members to be traveling in broad daylight. Meanwhile, the Jonin, Chunin, and Team 7 made their way out of the village. Sakura blinked as she watched the scientists talk their jargon to each other. She had absolutely no idea what they were saying. However, she made out certain keywords like chakra, time, and the world veins. She had no idea what all of these meant. Kakashi-sensei, what are they talking about? What is this thing that's going to revolutionize the shinobi world? She asked. The Jonin looked down from the book he'd begun reading. I'm just as lost as you, Sakura. If you really want to know, then you better make sure to glean whatever you can from them. Who knows, it might make you stronger than Ino, he said. Sakura froze. Hell yeah, suck it Ino pig. Once Sasuke-kun sees how strong I am, he'll realize I'm the only one for him. Cha. The pink-haired girl thought to herself. Will we get an opportunity to test ourselves in whatever they're researching too? Sasuke asked. Kakashi shrugged. Perhaps, Sasuke. Perhaps we will. Maybe if we do a good enough job, they'll allow us to undertake whatever they have. However, remember that we're there to provide assistance. But what kind of sensei would I be if I didn't give my students the chance to get stronger? Maybe something will happen, he answered. The Uchiha slowly nodded. He'd get to be a part of that revolution. If it gave him the power to kill Itachi, then he'd do whatever it took. Hate. That was a term Tonari was familiar with. He hated many things. He loved very little things. He hated this prison he'd been forced into. He hated the earth for refusing to submit to him. He hated the United Nation of Elements. He hated Uzumaki Naruto. No, let him retract that. He hated Emperor Uzumaki Naruto. Tonari stared at the dark sky in front of him, his steps a countless descent into the wilderness dream that he'd been trapped in. He brushed his shaggy, white hair from his eyes. How long had he walked here? How long had he been forced to relive that battle day in and day out? It all should have been perfect. He was on the cusp of subjugating the human race. With that feeble insect race under the control of the Otsutsuki, that would be another planet conquered and harvested for the God Tree. Over the years, the Otsutsuki had captured many planets, all of them providing a welcome source for the God Tree. It seemed to be a simple enough process. Invade, conquer, plant, destroy, then redo. That was how it went all those years. Countless civilizations always fell. Some were harder than most. That was fine. It was part of the thrill. Yet, in the end, their knees bent all the same. So, how had this planet, Earth, stopped them? How had Uzumaki Naruto subjugated him to walk through this never-ending prison? How long had he been here? A year? 10 years? 1,000? He wasn't sure. Tonari wasn't sure. One thing he was sure of was that this prison was somehow built by himself. It sustained itself off the energy that Otsutsuki members gave off. Given that they had a nigh-limitless stream of chakra from the various planets which they'd conquered, the jutsu had basically no end. Was this supposed to be his life, the life of a decrepit prisoner forced to stare at his own failures day in and day out? Maybe it was, but rest assured Uzumaki Naruto, Tonari would escape from this and he would enjoy making you watch as he tore down everything you ever loved and built up. Then he'd enjoy massacring your entire legacy. Indeed, Otsutsuki Tonari hated Uzumaki Naruto. Then feed your hate and reclaim your title in my name. Do this and all beneath my realm shall be granted to you. Give your life to me and receive your mortal vengeance. Receive my blessing and return to claim the throne that once was yours. Tonari gasped as he suddenly felt a strange power flourish through his body. A pain unlike any he felt before made him scream as the clouds above his head crackled and thundered. Suddenly, a strike of pure lightning flew down like a mighty dragon from the skies. It crashed into Tonari's skin. The young-looking Otsutsuki screamed even louder as his mind became assaulted by various images as the lightning seared his forehead with the seal of Raijin, the thunder god. The Otsutsuki felt a load of divine energy fill his body and explode from within it. Each pulse of lightning crashed against the barrier of the seal, breaking it and crushing it to pieces. It wasn't long before it completely broke apart as the pain pushed through Tonari's mind so much that he passed out. After a moment, the white-haired Otsutsuki slowly opened his eyes. Weary and weak, he stepped across the floor and fell to his knees. He was back in the Otsutsuki castle. His hands touched the ground. He was back on the moon. He looked around and he noticed the walls lined with the fuinjutsu that Uzumaki Naruto used to seal him and the entire clan away. He was free. He could feel how cold the ground felt, he could feel the air against his skin. A small breeze blew through the area he was in. However, that shouldn't have been possible. He was on the moon. However, that left absolutely no question. He was free. The man slowly rose to his feet. He looked back and he saw the hundreds of his family members, all of them sealed up slightly, just waiting for someone to wake them up. Well, they wouldn't have to wait any longer. Tonari held out his hand. He still felt very weak. It would take years to reclaim what he'd lost, but he'd been in a damn seal for nearly 60 to 70 years. He could wait another year or so. A blast of lightning expelled from the tips of Tonari's fingertips. The lightning seal in the middle of his forehead lingered for a moment as his lips curved upwards. Uzumaki Naruto, no matter where you run, no matter where you hide, this war was not yet over. First would come your world, then would come the next world that you ran to. Then, you would watch as Tonari took away all you loved. You would watch your wives bear his children, and you would watch as those children descend upon the worlds as their new inheritors. Only then, when your hope turned into a pile of dust in the wind, would Tonari keep you alive as a testament to all those who stood before the Otsutsuki. Never would you be allowed the sweet embrace of death. Meanwhile, from the divine realm, Raijin smirked as he watched Tonari break the fuinjutsu Naruto placed on the Otsutsuki members with the divine energy he'd given the mortal. Naturally, the Thunder God only gave the Otsutsuki member enough energy to break out his clan. Once that was done, it would be transferred back to him. However, the next problem was to somehow get him to Uzumaki Naruto. They were in entirely different realms and worlds. It wouldn't be easy without his mother or aunt knowing. He would need a distraction. As he was now, he knew he wasn't strong enough to compete with his mother, his aunt, and the others if they stood against him. However, he luckily had just the thing to distract them all while he worked. Have no worries, dear sister. You will be mine, at my side is where you belong. Raijin thought to himself as he started to go about his own duties. Naruto frowned as heard the waves of the mighty sailing vessel beneath him moving across the water. Those root shinobi who joined him were already resting below the deck. More and more he found himself impressed with the reputation of the gods. Once he, Tsukuyomi, and the root operatives stood on the edge of Tea Country, they saw a massive ship waiting for them. His wife pointed out the vessel, bearing the crest of Sujin. When they walked over to it, they were greeted by priests of Sujin's temple. Monks and priestesses welcomed Tsukuyomi and Naruto. When asked how they knew him, they responded. It would be strange to not know of Tsukuyomi-sama's husband. Your arrival was foreseen, one of them said. The emperor didn't know what to say to that, but he guided the root shinobi onto the boat and they quickly sailed to Sea Country. Ever since she'd gotten on the boat, Tsukuyomi began flourishing beneath the praises of Sujin's subjects. How odd that sometimes the waters turned turbulent whenever that happened. Either way, Naruto stood outside, staring at the starry sky. He'd been asleep, but he woke up. He had a bad feeling. He didn't know why, but he had a very bad feeling. It was that same bad feeling before the Otsutsuki invaded his world with their entire force. Was Tsukuyomi right after all? Was that why he had been called to this world, to prepare another world for the powers of the Otsutsuki once again? Could he even do it in a world even weaker than his own? Talk about having a losing hand. Then again, his wives always told him he seemed to have a knack for doing the impossible. Well, regardless of the how, he'd just have to give his best. In the end, that's all anyone can ever do. Why are you out here? Perhaps you find beauty in my domain and wish to fully take in its splendor. I don't blame you, dear husband. My domain has captivated plenty of mortal men and women. The blonde turned his head and he noticed his wife walking along the deck of the ship towards him. He couldn't deny it. Though his wife was just a tad egotistical, she was very beautiful. She deserved praise for her beauty. The blonde sighed. Shouldn't it be a combination of your domain and Sujin's? The moon along the surface of the water is indeed beautiful, he said while Tsukuyomi snorted. There's nothing beautiful about my little sister's childish pools, especially since her domain so heavily relies on mine, Tsukuyomi said with a scoff. Instantly, after the goddess of the moon said those words, a wall of water exploded from the sea. Before Naruto could even react, he heard his wife scream as a torrent of seawater fell on top of her, flooding the deck. Seems siblings hate each other no matter what realm they're in. I wouldn't mind a study into the social environment of gods, but something tells me that's not exactly good for my health, the blonde thought as water fell from the sides of the ship. The former emperor saw his thoroughly soaked spouse. Her black hair clung to her body like a wet rag, her eyes filling with rage. Excuse me for a moment, dear husband. The goddess said as she marched over to the side of the ship. He wondered if he should grab her. Was she going to go overboard? Instead of that, Tsukuyomi leaned over the railing and pointed at the ocean. When I get back into the divine realm, you shall suffer 1,000 torments, Sujin. Don't think that just because my powers have been reduced that I can't, Once again, Naruto watched as a pillar of water exploded over Tsukuyomi's face, drenching her for a second time. The force of the water pushed her hair up before it came crashing down over her face. The blonde quickly intervened when his wife's hair turned white. He grabbed her and pulled her away from the ledge. Do not interfere. Let me show that ungrateful woman who she dares mess with. Clearly, her EOG hath grown since I've not been around. Just thee wait until I'm free of this marriage. True fear shall be known. She snarled while Naruto laughed. The young man shook his head. I'm pretty sure I married a woman, not a duck. Don't get more soaked than this, he said as he grabbed her, literally kicking and screaming, back to their room. He sat her in a chair and went into the bathroom. He then returned with a towel. Hold still, he said as he started wiping her face. Tsukuyomi looked at him and shivered. There was that uncomfortable touching again. However, once again, she didn't find it unpleasant. The feel of the towel, the soft caresses of his hand against her cheek, they all felt nice. She found herself mute before his strong eyes. The blue of his eyes held a vast mystery behind them that captivated her. Never did she think she'd be captivated, at least by a man. I can wipe myself off, she said weakly. I know, he replied back as he channeled some Kaden chakra through his hands to help warm her hair. As a man who had 2 wives, he learned a lot about the importance of a woman's hair. Conan told him something like, take care of a woman's hair and she'll never forget you. Even now, he had no idea what that meant, but, clearly it made them happy. Tsukuyomi didn't remember when it happened, but at some point, she was enjoying a wonderful hair massage and dry cleaning from her husband. He sat on the bed and she had her head on his lap. Neither of them spoke a word. Now, of course, she had experienced this kind of luxury before, but there was something so soothing about this one. However, the feeling soon stopped and she felt the creaks of the bed. The goddess opened her eyes and she saw her husband getting up. He was headed for the door. What? Where is he going? I was enjoying that, Tsukuyomi thought before she saw him open the door. I think you can take over from here. I wouldn't want to overstep my bounds, dear wife. I'll see you tomorrow, he said as he closed the door before the goddess could stop him. She opened her mouth and closed it. With the blows to her pride she'd been enduring, she forgot to ask him what had been troubling him. Wait, should she even care? His mortal problems were not her concern. She was just there to play along with this farce that she'd created. In a few years, barely even a century, he'd be gone and she'd be back to what she should be doing. In fact, he should feel honored that a goddess would even feel personal concern over him, Uzumaki Naruto or not. The happier he was, the happier he'd be to continue serving her. Yes, that was obvious. She'd seen many Narutos under the moon. Some of them garnered her favors and others she hated with every fiber of her divine being. This one ought to be no different. Not just him, but she'd also seen many powerful warriors of different species. None of them could curry much of her favor. Why would he be any different? A goddess couldn't fall in love with a mortal, least of all her. She was just here to provide whatever he needed. There was no need for her to be concerned. Yeah, no need. Suddenly, there came a knock on the door. Tsukuyomi quickly smiled. Aha, of course her husband couldn't stay away from her. Maybe she'd even reward him. Sleeping in the same bed shouldn't be too hard. You may enter, Tsukuyomi said a bit excitedly, but her smile fell when she noticed a group of female servants. Greetings, Tsukuyomi-sama, we've been called as your attendants. Naruto-sama has spoken to us that you'd need a fresh pair of clothes. We'll be at your beck and call until we reach the shoreline, the head priestess said. Despite her mood, the goddess of the moon nodded. And my husband? She asked. He has taken a separate room. He asked to be left alone, the woman answered back. Tsukuyomi held her head down. Well, again, it wasn't her concern. All right then, dress me. You're free to go after, the woman with beautiful black hair said. The attendants nodded and started to work.